Long before the night that changed American music forever, Richie Valens was just a boy from Pacoima, a kid with a hand-me-down guitar, a big smile, and a sound that didn't fit neatly into any box the industry had at the time. He was born Richard Stephen Valenzuela in 1941, growing up in a working-class Mexican-American family in the San Fernando Valley, surrounded by music that mixed Spanish melodies, folk rhythms, and the early rumblings of rock and roll. He was quiet sometimes, shy in the way teenagers can be when they aren't sure the world is ready for them. But when he touched the guitar, the hesitation disappeared. He played school assemblies, neighborhood parties, backyard dances, the kinds of places where people stand shoulder to shoulder, move in unison, and cheer when a local kid does something extraordinary. By the time he was in high school, Richie was already a local legend. Word spread through Pacoima that there was a kid who could make a cheap guitar sound like it belonged on the radio. His classmates saw him as the boy who could turn an ordinary afternoon into a concert, and his neighbors thought of him as the pride of the block. And then Bob Keane, owner of Delphi Records in Hollywood, heard the rumors. Keane drove out to see this teenager from the valley, expecting something promising, not something life-changing, but what he heard shocked him. Within weeks, Richie Valens had a recording contract. In the summer of 1958, he walked into a Hollywood studio, barely 17, with the kind of natural presence most artists spend years trying to fake. His first single, Come On, Let's Go, hit with the energy of something new, raw, fast, danceable, and it immediately picked up national traction. Then came Donna, a slow, aching ballad written for his high school girlfriend. The song soared up the charts, proving that the kid from Pacoima could do more than rock. He could make the whole country feel something. But then came La Bamba, and everything changed. In a time when the American pop charts were almost entirely English-speaking, Richie recorded a rock and roll version of a traditional Veracruz folk song with all Spanish lyrics. He did it in one electrified take, and it became a hit. No major artist had done that before. Not at that scale, not with that sound, not with that cultural mix. He became a pioneer before anyone realized there was a road to pioneer, and he did it all before he turned 18. By early 1959, Richie was one of the brightest young stars in the country, and he was sent on the Winter Dance Party tour across the Midwest, alongside Buddy Holly, J.P., Richardson, and Dion and the Belmonts. The tour was supposed to be a celebration, a lineup of rising and established stars playing night after night, but the logistics were brutal. The travel schedule was grueling, the distances long, and the tour bus was notorious for breaking down in sub-zero temperatures. The heat on the bus wasn't reliable, sometimes failing entirely, leaving musicians shivering under blankets as they tried to sleep. It wasn't glamorous, it was survival. Musicians got sick, instruments froze, frostbite became a serious concern, and after yet another breakdown, Buddy Holly had enough. He decided to charter a small plane from the Mason City Municipal Airport to skip the long overnight bus ride to the next show in Moorhead, Minnesota. It was a simple plan: get ahead, get warm, get rest. A small break in a punishing schedule. At first, the seats on the plane were meant for Buddy Holly and two members of his band, Tommy Allsup and Waylon Jennings. But backstage that night at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, plans shifted in ways that only became meaningful in hindsight. Richie, cold, exhausted, and dealing with illness like so many on the tour, asked Tommy Allsup for his seat. They didn't argue, didn't debate, they simply flipped a coin, a single toss, heads or tails for a seat that neither of them could have imagined would become part of music history. Richie called heads. The coin landed in his favor. He won the seat. Meanwhile, J.P. Richardson, the Big Bopper, was running a fever and struggling to climb onto the bus. He asked Waylon Jennings if he could take his seat on the plane instead. Jennings agreed. It was a gesture of kindness, not knowing how much weight it carried. 3 musicians now had seats on the flight: Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. Richardson. Their pilot was Roger Peterson, a 21-year-old local aviator who had flown in the area for years. Peterson was experienced but still early in his career. He was instrument rated, but the Civil Aeronautics Board would later determine he was not fully proficient with the specific instruments required for flying safely through the kind of night weather that hung over Iowa at that moment. The conditions were tough: light snow, low clouds, strong winds, and near zero visibility, a dangerous mix for any pilot without full instrument mastery. Around 12:50 a.m., the plane, a Beechcraft Bonanza, lifted off from the runway into the dark Iowa sky. There was no drama on the ground, no cinematic warning, just a plane rising into blackness, watched by an airport staff member who saw the lights fade into the weather. Minutes later, the aircraft climbed to about 800 feet, made a slight left turn, and then began descending. There was no explosion, no distress call, no mechanical malfunction. The investigation later concluded the pilot experienced spatial disorientation, losing the ability to perceive the aircraft's altitude or attitude as it entered instrument-level weather conditions. In darkness, with snow swirling outside and no visible horizon, the human body can misread motion so severely that up feels like down. A pilot may believe he is climbing even as the aircraft is dropping nose first toward the ground, and that's what happened that night. The plane descended rapidly, still under full power. Around 1 a.m., the aircraft crashed into a frozen cornfield northwest of Mason City. The impact was violent. The plane tumbled across the field, breaking apart as it hit the earth. All 4 men were killed instantly. The wreckage wasn't found until after sunrise, scattered across snow-covered farmland. The news spread slowly, then all at once. First through local officials, then through the tour, then across the country. The shock was immediate and profound. 3 performers, each on a different artistic trajectory, gone in a single moment. But in Los Angeles, in Pacoima, the loss felt deeply personal. Richie was their son, their friend, their symbol. A Mexican-American star at a time when the industry rarely made room for voices like his. A teenager who broke barriers with songs recorded in single takes, fueled not by polished training but by natural instinct. In Pacoima, the grief ran through neighborhoods, schools, and family homes. Richie's mother, Connie Valenzuela, was devastated. Her son had been supporting the family with his sudden success. Friends walked quiet streets that once echoed with Richie's guitar. Teachers spoke softly about the boy who had filled school assemblies with energy. The community came together in heartbreak, recognizing that the young man who carried their hopes into the national spotlight was gone too soon. The Civil Aeronautics Board found the cause of the crash to be pilot disorientation in night instrument-level weather for which he was not fully proficient. There were no mechanical failures, no sabotage, no mystery, just a chain of conditions: winter weather, limited visibility, instrument demands, and human vulnerability converging in the worst possible way. Richie Valens had been famous for barely 8 months. He had recorded his biggest hits in a single year. He had toured for only a handful of weeks, and yet his influence lasted longer than entire generations of artists who came after him. La Bamba became timeless, a cultural landmark, a global anthem, a cross-generational bridge between Mexican heritage and American rock. His voice, forever young, carried a piece of Los Angeles with it wherever it played. And that is the truth behind the tragic end of Richie Valens, a boy from Pacoima whose talent rewrote boundaries, a coin toss that changed his path, a winter storm that erased a horizon, and a plane that never made it to its next stop. His story remains one of the most heartbreaking chapters in American music, not because of how long he lived, but because of how much he gave the world in the short time he had.